As a huge fan of metal, a genre that frequently dabbles in the world of our next game, it's no wonder that I saved it for the last scheduled game. But let's take a minute to set the mood. 1, 2...
Much better. Buried beneath the tumultuous waves, beneath the deepest, darkest corners of the sea, lies a city, a prison for the great old ones. Above them, slumbering upon his throne, lies the most powerful of these ancient ones, the immortal Cthulhu, and he is stirring in his sleep. It is said that when the stars are right, the great old ones will once again awake from their slumber and devour the world in madness. Some of us can sense the shifting within the shadows and the oddities pouring into our world. It is these among us that feel a compulsion to delay our dark fate. We're drawn by some sense of imperative duty and self-preservation to the halls of a sinister old museum, where dark powers seem to be gathering, monsters taking form, and doors to other worlds opening. An ancient text gives us the inkling of our only defense, to bind these horrors to their sunken city and their centuries-long catnip. Our only tool, our only hope, is to find and make an elder sign by Fantasy Flight Games. Elder Sign is an intensely thematic dice rolling game set in the world of Arkham Horror. Players take on the roles of 1920s pulp investigators, exploring anomalies in this spooky old museum. The game begins by choosing the Great Old One, which you will face, and then choosing which investigator you will take on the role of. Each Ancient One and investigator also has special abilities. We'll tell you more about ours during the game. On each turn, we'll go on adventures through the museum. These adventures are represented by these adventure cards. Or, depending on our luck, we may find ourselves stepping through doorways into other worlds, like these. Throughout our adventures, we will hopefully utilize clues, which let you reroll dice, spells, which let you save dice. You'll find items, which provide many different bonuses, but for the most part, add dice to your dice pool. But the things we will want most, the things we will desperately be searching out, are these. Elder Signs. These are what we hope to use to banish the Great Old One, to keep it from consuming mankind. The Great Old One will be collecting these, Doom tokens. If he fills up the Doom track before we collect enough Elder Signs, he wakes up and destroys the world. And how do we get Elder Signs? For the most part, you'll get them by completing adventures. How do we do that, you ask? Well, we roll dice. Adventures are made up of a series of tasks, and tasks are basically these lines, made up of a series of symbols. If the result of the dice rolls give us these symbols, we are rewarded. If not, well, bad stuff. I'll explain bad stuff in just a moment. Monsters look like this, and appear by several different mechanics in the game that we don't need to get into here. Monsters are placed on adventure cards and have to be beaten in addition to or in place of other tasks on the adventure. Now every time we roll the die and cannot complete a task, we remove one die from our pool and try again. You may then choose to focus a die, meaning to save one of your results for future rolls. You may only save one die for each investigator on that adventure with you. This is where spells come in. After you've rolled the dice, whether successful or not, you may choose to lock a die's result, or several, depending on which spells you have, or how many of them you have, for future rolls. This is confusing to a lot of beginning players. The difference between focusing a die and using a spell is that a spell can lock a die, whether successful or not, and can also let you lock additional dice. Focusing only allows you to lock one die, and only when you fail to complete a task. Luckily, some items let us add more dice to our pool, namely the yellow and red die. The red die even has a wild symbol. Each player will also have a stamina and a sanity value. If those ever hit 0, that investigator dies. Today, if that happens, that player will draw a new investigator. Oh, and did I mention that while we explore this totally creepy old museum, the clock keeps ticking. And every time the clock strikes midnight, the Old One grows closer to rising, and his power swells to affect us here in the museum by way of these Mythos cards. The game is over when the investigators come up with the necessary amount of Elder Signs or the Doom track is filled. Monsters are creeping into our world, heralding the return of a doom that we cannot fathom. Shall we face the thing that should not be? Or will we rise to the challenge and return the creature to his temporary rest? Time to find an elder sign.